This is Bridges Burned with Megan and Amy. Today on Bridges Burned, we're joined by someone who doesn't just tell stories, she sets them on fire and lights the way forward.
Jenna Kedy is a Nova Scotian disability advocate, youth mentor, public speaker, and the founder of Hope by Heart Storytelling Collective. She lives with chronic illness, mental health challenges, and systematic ableism since childhood. And instead of shrinking herself like she was told to, she picked up a mic and told her truth.
Jenna has spoken on stages across Canada and around the world, shown up in rooms where no one looked like her on purpose, and turned every too much she was labeled into power.
This conversation is about the gaslighting, the grit, the gut punch moments, and the liberation that comes when you reclaim your narrative. Because sometimes burning bridges isn't destruction, it's survival, and sometimes it's the start of something better. Jenna Kedy, welcome to Bridges Burned.
Thank you so much, guys.
You are our youngest person ever on this show.
So proud of that, too. Yeah.
How old are you, Jenna?
I am 21. I turned 22 in May, so...
May what?
I'm May 6th.
Oh, I'm May 22nd.
Yeah, I love age people, but I say I was born the day the last episode of Friends aired.
Oh my God.
That's an interesting fun fact, yeah.
Do you like Friends?
I've actually never seen it. As I said, I came into the world way too late, but my partner is obsessed, so I'll have to watch it at some point.
Yes, it's streaming now.
You've been advocating since you were 14 years old. What was that fire that got lit in you so early?
Yeah, I honestly just think it was a lot to do with feeling frustrated because I was really young when I noticed that, I live in Nova Scotia, so that, healthcare in Nova Scotia, but I was also seeing news headlines across Canada of people really struggling to get healthcare services. And this is, a long time ago. Like this is well over almost a decade ago that I was seeing these things. When I was really little, but I really noticed these things and I was like, what could I do to help make this better? And then when I got sick, I got pretty sick with my first diagnosis in 2015. And I really noticed the gaps in healthcare and the fact that I had to fight for pretty much 10 years with my mom to get my diagnosis. So that wasn't okay. And also, honestly, when I was in 9th grade, I needed to volunteer for one of my classes at school. And I was pretty sick at the time. So it was really hard to volunteer in the community. So I was able to get an opportunity. So through the Children's Hospital, I received my care. I was able to get a opportunity to volunteer there kind of in an advocacy role. And it was a council that oversaw the hospital from the youth patient lens. So I joined that council. And that was kind of a domino effect from there. And I've gotten opportunities for the last 7 years and have just kind of done whatever I could, to change healthcare in Canada, but also, help other people feel less alone, educate professionals, but also make sure that the general public is aware of not only chronic illnesses and specific diagnoses, but also, the struggles that are going on not only in Canada, but across the world when it comes to healthcare. And I love to say it, everything is healthcare. As I've gotten into my degree and gotten a little more nerdy, I've definitely become much more of an advocate for the social determinants of health and all of that because we all live with them. And no matter who you are, we are all patients at one point in our lives. And I think being healthy and having healthy communities is so, so important and something I will always advocate for.
Jenna, what was your diagnosis?
So I was diagnosed with juvenile enthesitis-related arthritis when I was 11 years old. So arthritis is obviously very uncommon and people actually are pretty surprised when I tell them that arthritis is actually very common in childhood. Juvenile arthritis is pretty common. It's actually more common than childhood cancer, which when I say that, I mean that's a good thing. But we all are very aware of how many kids get cancer. It's really awful, but more children get rheumatic disease than cancer. And it's really not something that people are aware of. And then the enthesitis label is what makes it rare. So underneath the juvenile arthritis umbrella, there's over 100 subtypes that you can get. So the form that I have is actually classified as a rare disease because it affects my tendons and it affects other parts of my body. And it's a pretty invasive condition and it's pretty rough. And then when I was 14, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which is a multiskeletal chronic pain condition. It's very common in women over 35, but less so common in children. But it's also very hard to get diagnosed with. So there's probably a lot of kids out there that have a misdiagnosis. And then in my teens, I struggled immensely with my mental health, with anxiety, and depression. And at 13, I went through the whole anorexia nervosa struggle, which I know is unfortunately not too uncommon for a lot of people, especially young women. And then I was diagnosed with learning disability when I was 17. So I went through like a lot of things, and I've been immunocompromised since my arthritis diagnosis because of the medications that I have to take for my arthritis. So I spent a lot of time very sick just because every time I would get sick, I would end up admitted into the hospital. It was very exhausting. And then in 2023 at 18, I survived septic shock, and I had every complication in the book from that. So I've kind of just been on the journey the last 3 years of finding my new normal in recovery from post-sepsis stuff.
I kind of wanted to know, like, what were your first when you were super young, like what was happening that made you be like, Mom, this is not normal, I'm in pain, or what was it?
Yeah, so honestly, I've had health problems since the day that I was born. I was an insanely healthy baby, but my mom did notice when I was like really little that I had a lot of skin problems. I had pretty severe eczema when I was really young, and I was her first child and her only child. So I was in like the ER probably every month of my first year of life, is what she had kind of told me, because she was so worried about my skin issues. And every time she would go in and meet with the doctors and the nurses, she was kind of always told, oh, you're just a first time mom having anxiety. This is nothing serious.
Oh.
And I hate that that is the reality of so many moms. They're told like, oh, you just have first time mom anxiety disorder. Like it's nothing. And they never really took it seriously. Kind of just had a lot of things. And then as I got older, and a lot of kids with arthritis actually struggle to meet developmental milestones when it comes to, mobility. But I was fast. I learned how to walk really quickly. I learned how to run really quickly. So I didn't have a lot of those signs that are very common in very young children. But when I started walking, I would fall a lot. I was so clumsy, but that didn't scare me from living a very active lifestyle. And my mom really noticed when I was really young, I would like fall and I would get like scratched to pieces by our family cat, and I would never cry. So she learned very early that I had an insanely high pain tolerance, because when I was really young, I was probably in a significant amount of pain. But at the time, I did not know that that was not the normal for everybody, because that was the only reality that I knew. And then kind of as I started school and stuff, I was always I found running and physical activity harder than the other kids. And I always thought culture, I thought, was I lazy? Was I just not as good? Did I need to work out more? And like, especially as I got older, like 10 before my diagnosis, started feeling a little bit more self-conscious about that kind of thing, because I was like, is it me that's the problem? But really, I had unmedicated arthritis for so many years. And then what happened was I got a really bad flu in the fall of grade 6, and it caused like an extreme flare up where I had like the numbness and the tingliness, and all of my joints from the neck down were like swollen, and I was covered in rashes and had a pretty significant fever. So that was really scary, but still I probably had 5 or 6 trips to the emergency department, kept getting sent home, drink fluids, rest, do all of that. So we listened to them when they told us that. They thought it was a virus, because of course, even fall of 2015, there was viral infections going around the community, and I was in school and busy, so it was very likely that that was the situation. But kept going back in. Then finally, during one of those ER visits, we got taken seriously and got sent up to the pediatric rheumatology clinic. And through them, I got every blood work test possible, every x-ray possible. And now as I've become an adult, at the time I thought that was really terrifying and scary, but now that I'm an adult and I actually understand, like when they were doing the blood tests and stuff, some of those big name diagnoses that they were naming off to my mom, and my heart just hurts for her in that experience, because they were saying some stuff that was pretty scary and pretty invasive. My diagnosis was definitely a little bit rougher, and it was a learning journey for sure, because my own family wasn't even aware of juvenile arthritis or rare disease, and it was just a learning game from there.
You seem so mature for your age and the way that you've been advocating since you were 14 years old. Do you think that's because of, having to live with chronic illness and your mental health challenges and, having all of these things spewed at you at such a young age? Like the fact you were like, I felt really bad for my mom, like that's a mature brain right there.
Yeah, I definitely think chronic illness plays a role. A lot of my friendships now are with other people who identify as chronic illness warriors, or people who live with disabilities or mental health challenges or life challenges. And I do think that when you go through something really traumatic or hard, which I also went through a lot of family trauma and other things in my life, and all of the things that come with chronic illness, it's so much more than just, the diagnosis, the medication, the hospital admissions. It really affects your way that you interact with the world. So I was 11, so I hadn't even had a job yet. I hadn't, really gone to school that much. It would affected my education and my employment abilities and my friendships and all the ways that I interact with society and life. So it really impacted that. But I was like, I could just sit around and be sad for the rest of my life, or I could do something purposeful with these stories and these experiences. So I decided to flip that switch and do the more positive route, which I'm proud of myself for doing that. But I definitely think chronic illness plays a role because you do need to learn very young to advocate for yourself and to, live that life. And it's very, very hard. But I think hard moments really toughen you up quite a lot.
I kind of want to ask, like, what's a day in your life like? Do you take medication to help with pain, or do you just power through it every day, or like what happens?
Yeah, so I live a very normal life, a very busy life actually, because I am in full-time university and I have two jobs. So I technically work full-time too, because I work part-time in the nonprofit sector where I support the most amazing people with disabilities. And then I also do my advocacy and public speaking. So it's a busy season of life right now, but it's happy and joyful. But I do take medication, so I take probably like 6 or 7 pills every morning, which to other people is crazy, but that's just my personal life. It's fine. And then I take painkiller every night to get through the night. And I do once a week on Saturdays, I do take a chemotherapy drug called methotrexate, which really helps with my pain, but it is a chemo drug and it's pretty nasty and gross. So every Sunday morning, I get the methotrexate hangover. And if I decide that I'd like to go out drinking, I have to delay my pill because I'm not allowed to take it on the same day as having an alcoholic beverage. So that's a funny part of my life that I have to plan that other folks my age don't. And then every 6 weeks, I go for a biologic medication called Remicade, which basically wipes out my immune system because arthritis makes your immune system overactive. So my immune system gets really excited, and that's what causes the deterioration of my joints and the inflammation in my body. So I have to take a very high drug that just completely erases my immune system. But the downside of that is when I get sick, there's no immunity left. But I have to get that done in a clinic with nurses because it's via IV infusion every 6 weeks. And it's very, very expensive. It's each dose is like I think it's like $6,000 each, and Family Pharmacare nor my private coverage will cover that. So it's the medication company actually gives it to me through they call it a compassion dose. So they know that I need it. So the medication company gives it to me for free because it's actually not approved by Health Canada yet in my specific diagnosis, which is
That's
crazy.
what I was going to say. Like, in Canada, while their healthcare is kind of crumbling, at least it's free. So not every aspect is free.
Very true. None of my medications are free. Some of them could get covered by Family Pharmacare if I needed it. I've been so blessed. I'm still a student, so I'm on my mom's insurance, and my partner is in the Canadian Armed Forces. So once I leave my mom's insurance, I won't have any struggles, but that's not the reality for anyone. And even in my own job, if I needed to apply for benefits through my job, I could, but I know that's not the reality for everyone. But even with those really hefty benefits, I still cannot get that IV medication. So the company gives it to me for free, and it's a company in another country. So with all the worldwide things that have been going on, it's been definitely worrisome that they might turn on Canada, but they luckily have not, and I've been able to keep getting it. But yeah, it's definitely not free. The medication's very expensive, and then the other things that support my life, so massage therapy, regular therapy, all of that stuff is not free. Canadian healthcare is very far from free, is what I would say, because you can go to a doctor and get the prescription, but the prescription costs money. So yeah, it's kind of strange in that way.
That's so crazy to me because if someone wasn't in your position, like you were saying, they'd be essentially screwed. Like, how do you think Nova Scotia and Canada as a whole can improve this? I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I always say, like, as a healthcare advocate, it is sad to say, but even at my age, a lot of the things that I'm pushing to change probably won't be changed in my lifetime because that's how slow things move, especially with the current climate of society right now. I think we're far from that reality. But I do think that we could take similar approaches to what, Finland takes, or Australia, or some other countries. I know Finland for sure. I don't know about Australia, but they have better approaches to their healthcare where the medications are all free. Also, free post-secondary education, I think, would change the game in a lot of ways because a lot of people can't become healthcare professionals just from lack of access to education. But it's the same. It's the circle that we're all in. If you're chronically ill and you don't have parents to support you, you're either going to end up in pain. And to be frank, like, you can die of arthritis because the inflammation, once it gets through your joints, it starts going to your organs and your heart and your lungs, and you start to feel really crummy over time. And you can eventually have pretty traumatic experience from that, which is not great. But then also, if you do dish out the money to buy the medication, you're not going to get educated. You're not eating proper meals, and it's just, you're in a cycle forever. And I think we all need to recognize that it's rough. And we shouldn't have to think about, do we want to get medication or food? That should never be something that has to be decided upon when we live in a country like Canada.
Absolutely. I know your story is very different, but I look at like, I've had like terrible stomach issues for like the past 10 years in and out, and they're just like, it's all in your head. It's all this. And I've had friends with breast cancer. She got her breast done and she felt a lump, and they were like, oh, it's just from your implant. It's just from your implant. It was the size of a dime when she went in. And by the time they took her serious, it was the size of a loonie. And I feel like, especially for women, you're just told you're crazy or it's this, or and you just, if you don't have the fuel to keep going, sometimes you just give up. So the fact that you had a mother that was just pushing for you and was like your number one cheerleader, what a difference that does make.
Very true.
That's incredible. You talk about surviving septic shock at 18 and how that was a turning point for you. How did that experience change your relationship with your body and the healthcare system?
Yeah, so that was an interesting experience. So I was actually traveling for a cheerleading competition in Orlando, Florida. And I went and I won my second world championship in cheerleading. So I was a para-athlete on Team Canada for 2 years. I won my second world championship, and the day later I started to feel sick. So then I was like, I don't know what to do because I'm in the States and I know it's very expensive to get healthcare here. So I was like, I'm just going to wait it out. I was probably, got heat stroke or something, or like whatever. So then I was really sad because I was supposed to go to Disney, and I love Disney very much. It's one of my favorite things in the world. But I couldn't because I got so sick and I was just so tired and I couldn't push through, and I did not know what was wrong. Thought it was a flare up, or we just didn't know. And then my stomach just started hurting and I really didn't know. I also deal with some pretty significant stomach issues, a lot to do with my medications. So I thought that it was that. I really didn't know, just a mess. So we looked on our health insurance card. We called the number on the back of the travel insurance line because we knew that we had travel health insurance. They said, go to this place called urgent care. I mean, growing up in Nova Scotia, I thought urgent care and ER was the same thing because we don't really have urgent care here. But then I learned it's really a 24/7 walk-in clinic, which one of them game changer that would be if we had that in Halifax. We don't. But I went in there, and the nurse, the lovely American nurse, checked my blood pressure and was like, I think my eyes are broken, and called in 5 other nurses, and my blood pressure was like scary low to the point that how was I still alive? And I remember this, which is like crazy. So they're like, we're going to call 911 and get you sent to the ER. And I was, because they're like, we can't do anything here. This is a walk-in. And we were just like, and I told my mom at first, I'm like, don't let them call the ambulance. It's too much money. And my mom was like, I don't care. Call the ambulance. So then it ended up going on an ambulance in the middle of a thunderstorm in the middle of Florida, my little Nova Scotian self, all the way. And the fire department came first because they were the first people that were near there. So they came, checked on me. And then the paramedics came, got me in an ambulance, went to this random ER in a hospital in the middle of Florida, right next to Disney. Advent Health Celebration. God love them. And I went in there, and they were like, I was in a regular room, and then they put me to the room right beside the nurse's station, and they were like, yeah, this kid's dying. Yeah. So then I ended up, I was in pretty severe septic shock, like really, really bad. And then my kidneys failed, my heart failed. I had fluid all in my lungs. So yeah, they had to knock me out for like 2 days. And I just remember like laying in the bright ER, and like them just 10 people running around me. And then I remember them being like, we're gonna send you to the ICU. And in all my healthcare experiences, I'd never been to an ICU before. This is the States. I'm like, what the heck? So then I get sent upstairs to the ICU, and at the time I remember they're like, we're gonna put a port in your neck because we're gonna need to do dialysis. And I was like, don't do that. That's too invasive. Don't let them do it. Like I kept telling my moms, don't let them do that. And then they were like, because at the time this is very TMI, but this is a girly podcast. I got an IUD like a month before. So I'm like, is it my IUD? That would have been the easier option, actually, if I had an infection from that, because that can actually happen, but that was fine. So they checked everything, and then, so basically I had double lung pneumonia and a UTI. that pretty much just knocked me out like that. And it's pretty bad. And they knocked me out for a couple of days to get the fluid out of my lungs. They were so close to needing to do dialysis, but they were able to clean up my kidneys. And they told my mom, they were like, call home and tell them she might not be coming back.
Oh my God.
So that was pretty chaotic and crazy. But I definitely, through that time, I had the 7-minute flash that people talk about. But it's like where you think about all the happiest memories of your life in like 7 minutes. And that's kind of, I had that experience. And then I had spent my entire teens wanting to not be alive. I know that's deep as well, but that was kind of, has survived multiple suicide attempts in my teenage years and went through that. And in that moment when I was actually almost getting to die out of my control, I was like, I don't want to die. Not yet. And I realized that it was not my time. So that really changed my mindset and my mentality and my gratitude going forward. But yeah, it was quite a traumatic kick in the butt, I will say.
I'm really interested to know what you felt when you woke up after the 2 days.
Yeah, I was just like, well, it's Tuesday now. And I don't know how I did this, but I did get my phone because when they were getting ready to put like the breathing machine on me, I don't know all the right terms. And the lung doctor was like, we're going to put you on the breathing machine. And she shook my hand. She's like, we're going to figure this out. And I was like, okay. She was a great woman that was in there. And I got my phone and I wanted Starbucks so bad. And that was like, I wanted like a strawberry sour refresher so bad. And I was like yelling at my mom to like get it for me or talking to her. And I got my phone, and people at this point at home knew I was sick. Like close people knew. And I'd go on my phone and I type, I want Starbucks into Facebook. No idea how I did that, like half unconscious, and posted it. And everybody's like, she's okay. But it's like, I'm literally the only person that would be like half dead and would write that onto Facebook. So that was my iconic moment.
I remember coming out of my appendix surgery and I said something similar. I was like, can I get a Tim Hortons tea now? Because like I wasn't allowed to eat or drink the day before because they were like, you're going into surgery now. And that's all I could think about was Tim Hortons tea.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So when that happened to you, did the healthcare up here cover all of that, or did you still have to pay?
So a really great friend of mine's mom actually started a GoFundMe for me, which really helped because not only I'm so lucky my mom was traveling with me at that time. I now travel solo, which I don't know how I've built up the confidence after that experience, but I have survived for some reason, so might as well keep going. But my mom was with me at the time, thank God. But because of that, she obviously was going to stay to help like take care of me and deal with everything and advocate for me. So she obviously needed to stay in a hotel much longer. And we had already, like, this cheerleading competition, I have a single mom, so like to go to this cheerleading competition for 10 days was already stretching the budget. Like we were at the max, so to have to add on like 2.5 additional weeks was a lot. So there was she needed to eat, and you know, we had a rental car we needed to extend, and we needed gas for the rental car, and she needed a hotel for extra days, and it was very expensive, so that GoFundMe helped cover that. But we're really fortunate my mom has travel insurance, so that covered all of my expenses while in the hospital and all of my medications that I needed to bring home. Because, for example, I ended up getting a blood clot and I needed blood thinners, and we called Canada, and the pharmacists in Canada were like, we're not going to give that to you, and you're going to need to see a specialist here to get the prescription, because if it's a prescription written in the States, they won't bill it Canada. So we had to figure out all of that in the States, which was wild. But I was able to get all of that covered. And the crazy thing that happened is, when you're covered under a Blue Cross, is who we have, which shout out to Blue Cross, not sponsored, but they were pretty amazing. They flew a doctor from Montreal to Florida to pick me up, to fly back with me to Canada, to make sure I was okay on the flight home, because I was still pretty sick once I was discharged and sent home. But they covered all of that. And then I came back to beautiful Canada, did not have a family doctor at the time, cried my eyes out in the Halifax airport, as you would being back in your home city when you never thought you were coming back to your home country. But I did that, and then no follow-up care ever since. Been 3 years, no idea. But somehow, from some grace of God, my young athletic body did not need rehab. I did not need any really cognitive support, nothing. I still deal with a lot of symptoms, but I've dealt with that all on my own, because there's no follow-up here. Even though in the States they were like, here's your follow-up plan, you're going to need kidney doctor, heart doctor, all of this. And we're like, yeah, they're not going to do that. And
nobody said to you that you need to see like these sorts of specialists now? No one?
No one. The States told me, they said, when you get to Canada, book this, because they think over there, if you want to see a specialist, you just call them and book it. Here, like, you know, you need the referral, the letter, the wait. That's how it works here. And when I got back to Canada, we told them the plan, and they said, oh, the States said that because they wanted money. That's not how we do things here. It's not necessary. So in order for me to see like a heart specialist or a kidney specialist, I would technically need to get sick again, which is wild.
My when I did radio, my co-host had a stroke on a plane landing in San Diego. Luckily, they were able to like pull him off the plane and bring him to like an amazing hospital and take care of him and everything. The only thing that was really effective for him was his speech, which is a sin because that's his job. So they stayed down there because they actually had a house there. So luckily for that, but they stayed down there and he had to get his own speech pathologist. And I think a year and a half later, he was visiting me or something, and a speech pathologist from Nova Scotia called him and was like, "Hi, we can see you in like 3 months." So that would have been 2 years after.
Yeah.
He would have never got his speech back. So it's crazy. Like you said, it's free, but is it? Because then if you really need to get something done, you have to pay or you have to go somewhere else. And I've heard of a lot of people, like if they have a child with cancer, they'll go to the States down to Boston or somewhere because it'll just get done sooner, more expensive, but sooner.
And it's crazy. And it's the thing is, though, is that a lot of people aren't in. My family would never have been, when I was little, like we could have. I know people too with arthritis who've gone to the States or the UK or all these places for arthritis second opinions. But like we were never in the situation to ever financially do that kind of thing. And I still am not now as a full-time student, but it's also, that's why it shows there is that privilege gap too of people who can, which I love that for them. But there's a lot of us who are just the everyday folk who can't really do that. And we're just stuck in the trenches.
My goodness. It feels so helpless. I mean, I've been in situations not as extreme as yours, but where they don't listen. I was in Emerge for 3 days trying to say something's wrong with me. And after 3 days, they found out I had appendicitis. And then I went in for surgery and stuff like that. But it took 3 days. And that's a lot when your appendix bursts. Like, it's a lot. It's just like, in the moment you feel so helpless. Once they know what's going on, things roll pretty fast.
Yes.
But I know the helpless feeling. I can't even imagine how you feel on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and that's why I'm honestly really scared. And I try to stay, whenever I see this headline, I honor the person in my own way and I step away from the news. There's a lot of septic shock cases across Canada where people pass away. And that is a very common thing. And especially, like, it was wild, but I could walk when my blood pressure was that low. I could still walk. And I have full confidence that Nova Scotia would not have let me survive. So that's why I say to everyone, it was a wild experience and not something I would recommend. And getting sick in another country is awful. And I never want to experience that because obviously there's the comfy at home things that you want. My house being close to the place I got sick is always a pro. But I'm just so grateful because I don't know, to be completely honest, if I would have survived if I would have been here. So I'm like, some grace of God, it happened during those 10 days.
It's crazy to me too, because I don't know much about septic shock. All my brain goes to is if you leave a tampon in too long, it could cause toxic shock syndrome. And that's all I know. So what are other reasons your body can do that?
So yeah, septic shock can, and that's the thing too, is I had never really knew about septic shock. And that's another thing that I'm very passionate about advocating for because septic shock is so common and it is fatal. Like there is more people that survive opioid overdoses and cancer combined than survive septic shock, which is like crazy when you think about how we know a lot about opioid overdose and a lot of, not to undermine, those things are deadly and kill a lot of people, but septic shock kills more people, but it kills people, I think, in more of a silent, invisible way. But those common signs of septic shock are someone being very sweaty, high heart rate, and low blood pressure, and it can happen due to anything in the body. So any type of infection in the body can cause septic shock. So it could be a toenail that's weird, a toothache, it can be a stomach infection, a scratch. It can be literally anything that can cause an infection can cause you to fall sepsis. So then once you fall sepsis, that's deadly. But when you go to septic shock is when that is like, you're basically dead at that point. We have to like revive you. And those are the symptoms of it. And a lot of people aren't aware. And I mean, I've done first aid and I worked with a lot of people with health challenges and did before that had happened and just had never been aware of that. But especially for people who are immunocompromised, it's something we got to be very careful of, especially with, young kids and stuff who are always getting sick. Like, keep your eye on them, like check their blood pressure, and not to make anyone anxious, but it's something that we really need to be aware of because if we can track it in the sepsis stage, you could save a life.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. Have you ever had to kind of challenge the professionals that weren't ready to listen? Like, it's always kind of intimidating with your when you're with your doctor and they're just like, no, no, whatever. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I've definitely had to do that my entire life. It is still so hard when I'm such a people pleaser and an empath and someone, but I've really had to learn how to be a little more of a spicy advocate in my own healthcare journey because there is so many things that get missed. Just making sure that you speak up for yourself, that you write down what you're gonna say, then you practice what you're gonna say too, because I know that our appointments are so short and they tend to rush you through. I didn't have a family doctor for a lot of years. I do have one now, and he's pretty awesome, but he is so busy. He has too many patients to properly take care of everyone, unfortunately, and that's not no fault to him. I cannot imagine how busy and overwhelmed and stressed he must feel in the run of a work day. And probably there's a lot of defeat there for professionals as well, because most doctors go into it wanting to help people and have really kind hearts, but when you can't do your job properly, it's very hard to enjoy it. And they feel a lot of hurt as well in this experience, and watching people die is not fun for anyone. But really just trying to advocate for your doctors, practice what you're going to say, writing things down, constantly asking questions and advocating, and not being afraid to speak up, because I know it can be really intimidating. I know, for example, like in Halifax at our biggest adult ER, there's a lot of security now for good reasons, but that can make the environment feel unsafe for a lot of people, especially marginalized communities, and I understand that. But just not being afraid to ask questions, speak up and advocate, but also at the end of the day, we need to understand that like healthcare all comes from the government, and the government is yucky and awful. And I hated that when I got into advocacy. I love talking to doctors. I love talking to, folks in that kind of realm in the healthcare space, but really comes down to government, because they're the people that give the money to the hospitals and have to give the check marks and all of the projects that take on. So writing your MPs, writing your MLAs, apathy is so boring. Staying involved, going out and voting, and like when financial plans are released, when there's town halls, showing up and using your voice and sharing your story, because it's so important. And that's something I've also been really lucky to do. So I got to go to lobby day with the Arthritis Society in 2024. So I got to go to Parliament and speak to folks, because I think it's so important, because we can have professionals get blue in the face advocating, but when people with real stories and like real faces and real families get up there and tell the politicians what's going on, we can really make tangible change in our communities, not even just in healthcare, but in whatever you're dealing with. And I know that space is so intimidating, but we pay their salaries with our taxes. So don't be afraid to go and speak up and ask all the questions, and, just to keep advocating, because that is your right.
Do you feel like when you are advocating, they're listening to you, or do you feel like they're like, oh God, here comes another one? Like when you are there, what is the sense you get? You're telling them your life story of, hi, I almost died. There was no follow-up. I have all of these like chronic illnesses. Are they just like, okay, we'll take it into consideration?
Yeah, I have to really be in my own self-care, and because it does take a lot of time and a lot of practice and a lot of stuff that I have to do. So I have to give myself space to be like, if one person sees this and decides to change their outlook on life, if one person sees this and decides that they feel less alone in their experience, or they see this and they're like, this might be something that I am dealing with, or they feel like they have greater empathy in their day-to-day life, if only one person feels that way, then I think my job is done. Like, if not everyone's going to like what I have to say, no change might not happen. But at the end of the day, I'm part of the puzzle that's going to be history that is going to create the change. And it's so like cliche, but it all starts with one person. Like, if we all come together and share our stories and speak up, real change can happen. And by staying silent, I'm not doing anyone any good.
That's absolutely true.
I think
What
it's
gives you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Amy.
I think it's very interesting because like you are younger than us and your generation. And I look at like for Megan and I, our parents could be like half dead and they wouldn't go to the hospital. Like you never went to the hospital unless you needed surgery. And then I can speak for Megan, but it was like you only went to the hospital unless something was really, really wrong. And now I think more people are like, oh, I'm sick. I need to go to the hospital now. So to see that generation and a younger voice like you speaking up, it's huge.
For sure, yeah, I definitely think there's a huge generational gap in that stuff, especially with like mental health and self-care. But we also have to, it's the morbid stuff, but recognize all the people who have passed away, but also the fact that now we have so much modern medicine that's changing rapidly. And again, in Canada, we pay our beautiful tax dollars. It is our right to utilize that modern medicine the best that we can and all of the stuff that we have access to. Don't be afraid to use it. And yeah, and I definitely think for sure, especially for men, it's very hard to want to access healthcare. And I always try to also advocate. I am a woman myself, so I don't have that experience, but also just trying to let them know too, it's okay to go to the doctor. It's okay to get support. And, we all are human and there's only so much you can do. You're not a robot. And it's so important to take care of yourself.
I was friends with nurses, and once I became friends with nurses, they were like, go to Emerge with everything, go to Emerge, go to Emerge. And I at first was like, no, I think both of us, me and Amy, working in radio, you're never really allowed to be sick. And so we learned that we're never sick. And then when we are, it's a bother to people. But once I became friends with these nurses, they were like, go to Emerge. And so I've been to Emerge more times in the last like 10 years than ever in my life. Not because I've always been sick, but because certain things were bad enough. And they were like, if you want to get seen, you got to go now.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it's going to happen. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see your doctor for a while.
Yeah, it's very true. It's so important that we do what we need to do for ourselves and our kids and take care of ourselves.
At 21, you've already done work many people don't reach in a lifetime. How do you stay present instead of constantly looking ahead? Like, what gives you hope when system feels slow to change?
Honestly, just choosing happiness. I know that's silly, but I truly feel that happiness is a choice. Life right now really sucks. I know I've had a little bit of the winter blues lately. It's snowing outside my window right now, and it's been constant weeks of snowing in Halifax. So that's a Debbie Downer for sure. But just trying to always stay positive, always having distractions, always finding a new coffee shop to try. That's really nice. Stopping and smelling the roses. I know those are so silly and dumb, but like doing those things and just like making the best out of your life, because at the end of the day, we're only here for such a snapshot of time. And I think that's what helps me stay present. Because like when I started advocating, my friends didn't think that that was cool. I was in 9th grade in high school when I started. Really, a lot of it was unpaid for a very long time. I only started getting paid the last 2 years. So I did 5 years of unpaid, completely unpaid. I still do so much time unpaid. So much volunteering and ground up work. And when I started doing that, my friends were like, oh, that's weird. And still at the end of the day, like I'm such a nerd with this stuff. I don't yap about it with all of my...
They think it's cool now.
Yeah. Some of them do, some of them don't. It is what it is. I'm my own person. But just remember that I'm here for a snapshot of time. Realistically, life, like a lot of us don't really remember our like great-great-grandparents. And that's not that many generations ago. So in like 3 generations, no one's going to know about me unless I do something like Beyonce level, which I might, but probably not. So I'm just going to do what I want to do with the time that I'm here. It might be embarrassing. It might be silly. But if I like doing it and it makes me happy and I have a fulfilling, happy, safe, content life, then that's what I'm going to do. Because at the end of the day, none of it really matters.
That's a fact. That is a fact.
For a young person like yourself living with chronic illness and mental health challenges, and you're listening to other people and you want to advocate change, what do you want people who are going through the same thing to hear the most?
Just that you're not alone. I know at the very beginning of my diagnosis, I felt so alone. I was so young. But also I know that anytime in your life that you get sick or you have a disability or a big change in your life that you feel is going to make you different, or that there is a barrier in front of you, it can be very hard because we all want to fit in society's boxes and be productive 24/7 and be this like perfect person. But remember, again, there's no definition of a perfect person. And honestly, fake it till you make it. Try to be happy. Even if you're not happy, pretend to be happy. I know that's so sad. It's okay to be self-aware of your emotions, but even just going out pretending to be happy has made me happy before. And pretending to be confident. Post what you want as long as it's happy and not hateful. Nobody cares what you're doing that much. They're too self-absorbed to care about what you're doing at the end of the day. and just love yourself in life, because that's one thing I'll say. Like, I have a gorgeous partner and he is so amazing and supportive, but realistically, the only person that I'm going to spend 24/7 with is myself. And that's the same thing that applies for everyone. I know everyone's like, oh, self-love, whatever. And one of my colleagues, when I share this with participants, said this is boomer Facebook advice. So this is my boomer Facebook advice, is that basically you have to date yourself, because the only person you're going to spend every minute of your life with is yourself. Do you want to spend all that time hating that person? Probably not. So you kind of got to live with it. You might not like it, but you got to live with it. So just learn what you like to do and have fun and get to know who you are as a person. Spend time alone. Don't compare yourself to other people. You're not them. So don't try to be them.
Oh my God, I want to be you when I grow up. Like, the confidence. You are just incredible. You're just incredible. What are like the 3 things you would love to see the Canada healthcare system change the most?
More people getting seen, more women being heard, specifically women and people from marginalized communities being heard and feeling safe and feeling like they can trust our healthcare system. That is a million years away, but that's something that I really, really hope in our heart, and that more parts of our healthcare system will communicate with each other so we can all feel less like we are our own little pilots of our journey, and we feel more secure in our healthcare journeys, because I think that will help people feel not only more safe, but also just more clear with what they need to do and where they need to go, and less getting lost in the cracks.
It's amazing. Jenna, you were so great. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you guys.